back to Gardener's World. Now, it might be spring by name, but it's certainly not by nature today here at Longmeadow. We've had a smattering of snow, we've got more forecast, and there is an icy wind cutting in from the east. It is distinctly chilly. And I plan to show you the spring garden in all its glory, because it's been good so far this year. It's still got snowdrops, crocuses coming through, daffodils, helleborus, these early perennials starting to kick into flower. But today they have been bent by cold and a bit of snow. They're beginning to reassert themselves. And if you find at this time of year you get a batch of bad weather, which we do get, don't worry. The plants will recover with extraordinary speed. They may look as though they've died, but a bit of sunshine and they'll be as good as new within a day. We've been busy over winter, made some changes, and I'll show you those. We've got more planned, and of course, lots to be getting on with. So it's great to be back. On tonight's programme, we visit a garden in Wolverhampton with a surprise around every corner.
A smallish suburban garden doesn't have to be boring. You just feel as if you're in another world.
And Adam Frost shows how, with a bit of imagination and some clever design, you can make every space count.
This is one mistake that so many people make. They start building their garden before they've really measured it.
Longmeadow has had a robust winter. We've had a lot of weather, including a very heavy fall of snow in December. In one day we had about 2 foot of snow, and the effect was literally to crush things. So the grass borders, which can look the best in the whole garden all winter, were just flattened. All this damage was done in one day, and now they're ready to be cleared. As soon as the weather gets a bit better, that's going to be one of the first jobs. Come on. Well, the fickleness of March weather is certainly living up to its name. We've got a blizzard, we've got sunshine, who knows what we'll get next. But before Christmas, as well as heavy snow, we had a really cold night. It got down to minus 14 here at Longmeadow. And the effects were pretty lethal to some of these herbs. The bays, for example, didn't like it at all. They're actually not dead, the top is, but at the base you can see there is green growth. But it means that these have lost their structural value. I'll dig them up, see if we can salvage them, but replace them, and probably with more of these RSUs. I put these in autumn to create a brand new avenue here in the herb garden, and I think it's more dramatic. The real big change is here. Now, for nearly 20 years, we've had a greenhouse here, and it's done us proud. We've grown tomatoes every summer, salad crops in the winter, and it's worked fine. But gradually, it started falling apart. By the end of last year, it was positively dangerous. So, that has been taken away. And this space, which is now revealed as quite a nice big area, is going to become my new paradise garden. I spent a lot of last year travelling around filming paradise gardens. It made a big impression. What I want to make here is my own paradise garden. It will involve formal water, a building, a rill, borders, hedges, hard surfaces, and that will all unveil itself as we progress throughout the year. And it is this year's big project. I really love starting a new project. And with some inspiration and a bit of imagination, really you can achieve anything. And we certainly discovered that last August when we visited a garden in Wolverhampton. Now originally this had been an unremarkable suburban back garden. Now it's being transformed.
We call it the Garden of Surprises because the idea is that as you go round the garden, you come round a corner and go, oh, I wasn't expecting that. We first moved here in 1990. The garden was just lawn and conifers and nothing else really. We wanted it to be a garden where you couldn't see it all in one go. We wanted to try and divide it up. And so it gradually evolved. There wasn't a plan, was there? I'm the creative director, and I'm particularly interested in the different uses of plants, but also the myths that exist about the plants in the countries that they came from.
My role is more mundane in that someone has to do all of the maintenance and the propagation. When we've agreed that we need a structure in the garden, I'm the one that builds it.
A lot of the enclosure of the garden is actually coming from borrowed trees in neighbouring gardens, which helps give it its special atmosphere.
The two issues with the trees is dryness and light for growing plants underneath them.
One of the obvious things to do was to
Pan a couple of times and was inspired by their gardening. I built this Japanese tea house and we've picked a range of plants and arranged that gives a Japanese flavour to it. With the different types of bamboo we've got 3 or 4 aces here. We've brought some features such as the dragon.
This is the Indian ink plant, and it comes from North America. It's also called pokeweed. It has spikes of white flowers, and then it has these wonderful red berries that go black over time. It does this in one season. It's quite good-tempered, part shade. It's not especially bothered about moisture, and it was used by the Native Americans to make war paint and dyes for textiles, but it was also used by the early settlers in America to make ink. And there is a story that the American Declaration of Independence was actually written in ink made from this plant. This is another interesting group of plants, agaves. They come from Mexico and Middle America and they grow in the desert. They can make agave syrup and they can also produce sisal to make textiles with. We have all sorts of interesting comments from visitors to the garden. Some of them I find wandering around in the middle of the garden saying, "I'm lost, where am I?" Which is really what we're trying to achieve, that people are in another world. The folly, which looks like the corner of a monastery. Somebody said to me, "Oh, I didn't know there was a ruined monastery in Wolverhampton." I said, "Well, there isn't."
The inspiration for the summer house came from Castle Cough, where we liked the arts and crafts effect that was created. It's been built with reclaimed stone and reclaimed doors and windows from a very old summer house that stood here, and hopefully it gives a very warm feeling when you can sit here on a late afternoon with the sun and have a view of the summer house border and the mock folly at the bottom. This is the 1939 brick air raid shelter, which, as you can see, we've turned into a shell grotto. The themes are designed by Anne and represent fire, earth, air and water, and day and night. The time it took to do this was probably 7 years. It was one of those things where you start off with a good idea, and then much later
A smallish suburban garden doesn't have to be boring. We're only 1.5 miles away from the town centre, but you just feel if you're in another world because of the way it wraps round you. That's what a garden needs to be. It needs to take you to another place.
I think that does show that if you've got some imagination and a little bit of drive, you can do anything in your garden. Just go for it. Now, I'm feeding the birds. I love feeding the birds. I love watching them, so we have them on a table here outside the kitchen window. But it is important when the weather is like this, if you can, to provide them with some food. We use old logs, wood. It's got crevices, and that means that the bigger birds won't be able to hog it all, and tits and finches can get in there and work in all the cracks. A little bit of cover, so if it snows or rains hard, you've got some dry food. And again, put a few sticks and twigs down. They can get under it, they can stand on it. It makes it more interesting. You do need to include some water. Now, obviously, it has frozen overnight, so you need to check that. And a shallow dish, not a deep one, so that they can get in small birds and can drink. And if you've got it, an old dustbin lid is ideal as a bird bath. We deliberately don't cut back that brambly shrub on the wall because that gives cover to the small birds. So if you've got a shrub, put a feeding station right in amongst it. The pigeons can't get there, the sparrowhawks can't fly in, and also it's trickier for the squirrels. Talking of squirrels, fat and suet is really important. We hang it up in cages so they can't get it. One final note. It's cold, it's a busy time for birds, they're using a lot of energy, so if you start to feed them, continue right through until we reach good weather, which will be the end of this month at least, because they use a lot of calories coming up to find the food. If there's none there, then it's wasted energy. But I think the return and the pleasure from watching these little birds is as good as a gorgeous flower bed. In you come. Come in the warm. Come on, in you come. Ooh, it's nice to get in out of the cold. Now, one of the things that has really horrified me, looking at the garden over this winter, is the amount of plastic that we're using here. We have plastic pots, we have plastic seed tray. Almost everything I buy is wrapped in plastic. And I think that that's not acceptable anymore. Personally, I want to do something about it. So I'm taking stock of the plastic I'm using in the garden with the idea of cutting down. Now, I do stress I've got no and share them with you. And if they work, great. And if they don't work, I'll be honest about it and we'll have to try something else. Now, the first thing is to take the plastic you've got and do an audit of it. So, for example, these plugs, which are very useful and we use all the time, are very flimsy. And that means that we use them a few times and then they rip and they tear and we chuck them away. But what I'm going to do is use them till they drop and then replace them either with a non-plastic type of plug or something much more robust. Well, I think that's the sort of thing. Whereas this seed tray is really robust. I don't know when I bought this, probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's probably good for another 3 or 4 years. So if you're buying plastic, buy good, solid stuff, because the best way to recycle is to reuse. So use it, and use it again. That's number one. Number two is to look for alternatives. Now, I've got various pots here. You've got pots that are made out of coir. This is the outside of coconut. You can get pots made out of miscanthus. Miscanthus is a grass. They claim to biodegrade and go on the compost heap. You can get kits to make pots out of newspaper. You can use toilet rolls. There are all kinds of different ways. But today I'm going to start doing the most obvious alternative to plastic, which is to use terracotta. There's no reason why you can't sow in terracotta pots. And if you look after them, you can use them and reuse them. It is important to sow tomatoes and chilies in particular as early as you can. So if you haven't sown any and you want to grow them, this is something that you really want to get on with this weekend. If you're growing them outside, there's not quite so much hurry. I'm going to take my gloves off. That's how daring I'm feeling. Okay, the thing about these pots that I've got, and I've had these for a number of years, recycling, is they've got a great big hole in the bottom. So you need to cover that over, otherwise the seed compost falls through it. And seed compost, by the way, tends to be lower in nutrients. So it's a good growing medium, but it's deliberately not too rich because we want these seeds to grow at their own pace. We don't want to force them on, and then we can pop them on later. Now, this is a pepper called long red Marconi. Not many seeds in there, so I'll just put them into my hand. There's plenty. I've got my glasses because the truth is I can't see the seeds in my hand. I can feel them, but I can't see them. Now, I really do not want these to be touching, if I can help it. Because if you cram the seedlings too close together, they will from day one grow without the strength that you want. I've just got one more in there, and that's it. Cover those over lightly. Just a little sprinkle of compost, and you could do it with just vermiculite or grit if you've got it. And then I will water that, and with these peppers, they do need heat. Thermostat, then you can set it. Otherwise, on a windowsill above a radiator. And a little tip, if you're growing chilies or peppers, is water them with warm water, because cold water cools them down, and they do need heat. Now, as well as looking at alternatives to plastic throughout this series, we're also very keen to maximise the potential of every space in the garden. It doesn't matter how small it is, every space counts. And a few weeks ago, Adam Frost went to visit a small back garden in Bristol to demonstrate that you can transform even the smallest garden.
Do you know, for me, designing a garden is one of the most exciting things you can do. But I get that some people find it a little bit frustrating, maybe even daunting, especially when you're working with a really small space. But for me, just with a little bit of thought, it's amazing what you can get out of even the tiniest of gardens. Small gardens can be quite tricky, but hopefully I'm going to show you it is possible to make every space count.
Right, my tiny little garden.
It's a bit tight, isn't it?
That step is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
It's quite a small space.
It's tiny.
It is, isn't it? What is it that gets you down and makes you feel sort of a little bit grumpy about the whole thing, I suppose?
I think the walls are very oppressive. I feel they're coming in on me.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's miserable, and it just looks horrible. The floor, the deck is awful.
Yeah,
it's
it looks a little bit uneven,
and it's
doesn't
quite
it?
dangerous, I think. And I've tried this bed, I've tried to grow flowers and pretty things, and it just doesn't respond to my kindness. I want it to feel happy.
Happy, so you want it to put a smile on your face. At just 3 metres by 6 metres, Sue's garden is compact, but I'm sure we can bring you life in this dark, poky old space. The first thing we need to do is get measured up. This might seem like an awful lot of work for a small space, but I think this is one mistake that so many people make. They start building their garden before they've really measured it. So making sure you've got everything on a piece of paper is a great way of understanding that space. The next thing you want to worry about is where the sun comes up and where the sun goes down. I mean, if your house faces north and it doesn't get a lot of light right through those sort of winter months, and I put you a smooth surface out the back there, it's going to become really slippery and dangerous. So, you know, that light levels really affect that whole design process. I really love the curved wall, and I'm going to use that shape on the ground to create an upper level, so the step outside the back door feels more comfortable. It will also help bring the wall down into the garden. I'm taking out half the raised bed to give more functional space. I'm using 3 main materials. Brick to link the surface area to the walls, light textured paving on the upper level, not only to make the area feel brighter, but also to make it safer to move around. Lastly, on the lower level, I'm going to use gravel, which will not only provide textural interest, but also help the area drain. As soon as the landscapers are finished, we can get on with the planting. Look, I brought you some goodies.
Wow, they look fantastic.
A garden for me is never, ever really a garden until we get those plants in.
Well, they're beautiful.
You going to help me?
Yes, please.
Let's get stuck in. The first thing I want to do is add some interest to the wall with this beautiful climber that works really well in shady conditions. So we start with hydrangea. This should leaf up well. Lovely white flower. It'll self-cling to the wall.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But also I think it'll wrap around your water feature, you know. So
Lovely.
even in the winter, this will look good
Yes.
against that wall. And I think when I'm putting the gardens together, all I'm trying to do is just slowly build them up in layers. So I've got your whole array.
They look beautiful.
Yeah. We've worked a lot of compost and organic matter into soil, so it's good, moist, but shady, semi-shady conditions. The ferns are going to be brilliant. And that gives you that lovely sort of texture.
Wonderful colour too, isn't it?
It's beautiful, isn't it? And there we go, look. I know you like your pink. All right. You look at your hellebore there, with this sort of euphorbia across, look. You look, that pink tinge.
Isn't that brilliant? It matches perfectly.
So it's those little bits of detail, so as that sits in, and they'll just have a little bit of relationship, which just that little tone which picks up really nicely.
Look gorgeous.
So everything you've got in here will grow in those sort of shady or semi-shady conditions.
Right.
Come up every year.
So they don't need replanting?
That's it.
Wonderful.
So all I do want you to do is every year maybe put a little bit of compost back on top, some sort of food just to keep things going. And then this plant here doesn't look much at the moment, but this is Astrantia. Beautiful white flowers, look like paper.
Wonderful.
You know, so stunning.
Looking forward to seeing that one.
Yeah, that's lovely, and it'll keep flowering and flowering. So really, all we have to do now, just get them in. When you're choosing plants for a small space, don't just think flower. Think about leaf shape, habit, and texture. You can even go big and bold if you want to. But don't use plants that are too heavy, as they'll block out light. Go for light and airy plants. If your space is dark, choosing flowers and foliage that are light in colour will really help lift your garden. Just make sure whatever you decide to grow will be happy in the conditions you have. Once all the plants are in...
That's amazing.
There you go.
Thank you. It looks beautiful. It's my happy garden.
It is, and I love it today, and you smiled so much. But take yourself back. You were scared to come out because you're worried about slipping over. It was dark, it was dingy. But I think it proves, doesn't it, that even if you've got the tiniest of space, just with a little bit of thought, you can create a really lovely little garden.
Absolutely amazing. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Hope you enjoy it.
I will.
Good.
Well, that does show what you can do. It doesn't matter how small the space is. And this year we do want to celebrate small gardens. And we're running a competition. We would love to hear from you if you have a small garden, no more than 36 square metres, that's 6 by 6. Send us 4 pictures, not hard copies, they must be uploaded. They can be on the same day or taken across the seasons. And show the innovation and the design. We're looking for creativity. And of course it must be your work, not something you paid for. Then we will choose what we think are the 5 best gardens, come and film them, show them on the programme so you can all have a vote. And then we will announce the winner of the competition at Gardeners World Live. And all those details are available on our website. And what we're really after is to prove that no matter how small, every space counts. Well, although this weather does limit what you do in the garden, there's no point in trying to plant or do anything like that, there's no reason why you can't prune. And pruning in cold, frosty weather will do no harm to the plants at all. So you can do apples, you can do clematis, you can do buddleia, and you can do roses. Now is a good time. Any time in March is a great time to prune roses. Now with shrub roses, what you're looking for is to create a good shape. This is a rose called complicata, and you can see that it has become a tangle, nice and healthy. It's been pruned back in autumn, but I want to thin it out. When you're reducing the tangle, what you want to think of is creating a shape where every branch, every stem has space around it. And the real thing to remember when pruning roses is the weaker the growth, the harder you cut it. And that's counterintuitive. But you will stimulate nice strong growth by cutting back hard. So I'm going to get right in down the bottom, which is why I bought the loppers. See, I think that central one, which looks nice and strong, but actually is crowding the middle, that could come out. Any shoots that are damaged or cause an open wound, which will be much more prone to fungal or virus infection, they need to be cut back. Come on, don't you come. Next step is to remove the weaker growth. And in fact, I'm going to take that off right back there. We've got this which is crossing, so that can come off there. But this is not a fine art, and I don't ever spend more than about 10 minutes on any one plant. So don't feel that there is an absolute correct way to do this. But don't be frightened of it. You're not going to do any harm. These are tough plants. Now, if you haven't got roses and you don't feel like pruning or it's too cold, don't worry. Whatever the weather, I've got some jobs for you this weekend. If you grow rhubarb, it's a good idea to force some, and the time to do this is now, before you've seen anything other than the first sign of a bud. The important thing is to exclude all light, and it really doesn't matter what you use to do this. Leave the cover on for about 4 weeks. Then you'll have extra succulent sweet shoots. Now that we're in March, it's time to prune late flowering clematis like this Viticella, because they produce all their flowers on new growth. This means you can cut them right back to the ground, but if you grow them in a border like I do, I found that it's a good idea to leave a foot or two of growth so that the new shoots begin their life without the competition of surrounding growth. houseplants are killed by overwatering than anything else. Now, a good way to avoid this is to put a saucer underneath each pot and never water more than once a week. And when that saucer fills up, immediately discard the residue. However, it is a good idea to mist houseplants at least once a day, and a good tip is to use rainwater rather than tap water. Well, it's certainly been a chilly start to our gardening year. But come snow, wind, rain or shine, we'll be back here at Longmeadow next week. So until then,